Hi everyone! I just found out before recording that Leonardo da Vinci... Hi everyone! I just found out before recording that Leonardo da Vinci dissected bodies during his life on Earth to improve his paintings. And now I feel a little creeped out reading his birth chart. And I had to tell you so you can suffer with me. Sorry. But that fact tells us a lot about him. The first thing that stood out to me was this bold blue line right here. And this is a sextile between his sun and his moon. And this basically says it all, because the sun in the 5th house makes creativity, self-expression and romance play a big part of someone's identity. But in Taurus, this creative sun expresses itself slowly and practically. This tells us why he spent years on his paintings before finishing them, going from city to city with them. He approached creativity as with his art in a careful and methodical way, and wasn't scared of giving it the time and practical effort he felt like it deserved. But with the sun being here, this pattern of self-expression becomes a big part of his identity. Taurus also made his creative endeavors be taken seriously by him. So moving over to his moon, which is in Pisces in the 3rd house. So here, his emotional world with the moon being in the sensitive and intuitive and imaginative Pisces. So this makes you easily absorb the feelings of others around you and makes your imagination very vivid. But in the 3rd house, it creates a very unusual mind, because the 3rd house is about how we think, learn and communicate. So his way of learning and communicating was very intuitive. And the moon being here can become skilled at poetry, music and storytelling. And that was actually a big part of Leonardo's life too. He was a skilled lute player and wrote thousands of pages in his notebooks. But the sextile is what makes it most interesting, because this means that his creative self-expression with the sun in the 5th house came from his imagination and sensitivity, with his moon being in Pisces. So this isn't someone who just lives in their head and keep their imagination to themselves, because this sextile allows that imagination to take form creatively and practically in the material world with Taurus. But there's something else going on here, and that is his Jupiter being right next to his moon. So this means that they are in conjunction, and Jupiter here expands all of these themes we just talked about. This made his need for learning and expressing himself enormous. And it can make his curiosity feel limitless. But this also means that his Jupiter could get lost in the many opportunities that Pisces presented for it, and kept wanting to learn more and new things with it being in the 3rd house. So these placements and this sextile could answer the question why the Mona Lisa was never finished. So he started the Mona Lisa around 1503, and he passed away in 1519 and kept working on the painting almost that whole time until his death. His Taurus sun didn't create art to become successful. It was all about the satisfying process of learning new ways of painting with the 3rd house and expressing that with the 5th house, taking its own sweet time with Taurus. I'd also say that his heart was really poured into his art as well. Even though he spent so much time learning practical tools and ways to paint, ultimately his feelings were inseparable with his art because of the moon being here in Pisces, which is a very sensitive and emotional sign. And I actually have a confession, because there's so much talk about Mona Lisa's smile And the first time I heard about it, I thought that can't be true because she doesn't smile in the painting. Then I looked it up online and saw that she was actually smiling. And I was stunned because I had seen an image of that painting on the walls in my school growing up, and I saw it so many times, but I never remembered any smile. I'm not sure if that's a Mandela effect or what's going on, but please, if you had the same experience, feel free to share it. So going back to Leonardo's chart, he also had Venus in Taurus. So here Venus is in its home sign. And this placement creates a focus on beauty, pleasure, and harmony in the material form. But the 6th house connects this to his work and daily life. So this made him find a lot of pleasure in his art, in patiently refining his art through daily practice. And his Venus is also trining his Neptune. And that's the line right there. And this creates another aspect that makes it possible for him to use his imagination and sensitivity in his art. Because the dreamy and sensitive and creative Neptune seeks harmony in Libra, and it also makes it possible to have a creative career being in the 10th house. So having a trine between his Neptune and Venus created a harmonious energy flowing between them. So his imaginative ideas express themselves through his career in harmony to his slow and methodical way of developing and perfecting his art. But what's most interesting about this is that his Neptune conjunct his Midheaven. So the Midheaven is about your public persona, and if you have this placement, it means that your dreams, creativity and spirituality is directly connected to your public image and career. So you'll probably thrive and become well known if you pursue a career within a creative or spiritual job. So this again shows how he was made to make his art public. But unlike Neptune, the Midheaven is in Virgo. And this again grounds that creative and dream energy into something material and practical. So this implies even more so that he'd thrive in an artistic career where he can use that dreamy Neptune energy and make something material of it, like a painting. And he also got his Saturn in Libra in the 10th house. So this slows down his process even more, because Saturn is all about slow and steady wins the race, and it creates a very disciplined and hardworking attitude towards your career with the 10th house. And having it in Libra gives relationships an important role within your job. So if you have this placement, your ability to navigate professional relationship is going to be helpful within developing your career. And this can be seen through Leonardo working for wealthy people. He worked as an architect, and he also made complex mechanical props for big royal events. And the famous Mona Lisa painting was believed to be a painting requested by a nobleman who wanted a portrait of his wife, Lisa Gherardini. So his connection within his career were very important for his success. And in researching for this video, I found out that Leonardo injured his right hand during his last years and probably couldn't keep painting some of his paintings like the Mona Lisa. He still painted with his left hand on other types of projects though. But I found that fact so interesting because he could have injured it through either a stroke, fainting or falling, they believe. And what's the odds that he would injure the right hand that allowed him to keep creating his masterpieces. And I just knew that there must have been a deeper reason to it. And because I'm obsessed with astrology, I printed out his transit chart for a day during the period of time he supposedly injured it. And that's the chart there. So, first off, I just want to describe what a transit chart is, if you're not aware of it. So, the inner planets here are the placement of his birth chart. That's how the planets were positioned the exact time he was born. And the outer planets here, the orange ones, are how the planets were positioned in the sky on a particular day. So this is how predictive astrology is performed. We look at how the planets are on a specific day and what aspects they make to the placement when the person was born to understand what's going to happen on that specific day. Now, we don't know the exact day he injured his hand, but I looked through many days and found this one to be very interesting. And this is April 30th, 1517. So my eyes were immediately drawn towards his natal sun, because here he had his transit sun, Uranus, and transit moon, all in conjunction to his natal sun. So transit Uranus conjunct natal sun is a slow aspect that occurs during many months, and it only happens one time in your life. And when this occurs, it brings a sudden and typically dramatic change in your identity. It could also be within your relationships, work, and other areas of your life. And here we can see that his creative identity, with his natal sun being in the 5th house, was disrupted by transit Uranus. So here transit Uranus doesn't want the sun to become too identified with the person he used to be, the artist. He might have gotten too attached to what he could make with his hands, and this was an opportunity for him to find out who he was outside of being an artist. But I must say that this energy can be expressed very positively too. You definitely don't have to get hurt when this occurs. You could have very beautiful experiences as well. So that's the most significant placement here. But on this particular day, he also had transit moon and transit sun conjunct his natal sun too. And the transit sun could have been the activator for Uranus to create an event that disrupts things. And the transit moon makes this event affect him emotionally. And other than those aspects, we also have a lot of tense Mercury energy, like these squares here, and 3rd house energy going on with all of these aspects here. Since both Mercury and the 3rd house are connected to our hands, means that this could have triggered something here too for him. So we are left not knowing if he intended to finish the Mona Lisa or not, but I don't think the Mona Lisa was ever made to be finished. It was made by the pleasure of art, and the fact that he took his painting with him wherever he went for 16 years is the reason I believe so many people were captivated by it. We see years of Leonardo pouring his heart into his art, and doing so just because he wanted to. With so much intuitive energy going on in his chart, I believe he could sense that this painting was going to be an important one. Maybe he didn't predict that it would make millions of people to enjoy it hundreds of years later, but something made him keep painting it. And I believe that's why we find so much beauty in it. Another thing I wanted to mention, Leonardo's grandfather actually recorded his birth time, which made it possible for me to do this reading about him today. So, a man in the 1400s, during the medieval times, decided to write down the birth of his grandson which didn't have any specific meaning at all during those days. Only for me, over 500 years later, be able to describe Leonardo's birth chart in a video and share it. And I found it so interesting how such small details matter and how we are all affected by small things people do or don't do. So with that being said, I want to go deeper into his second house, since he got both Lilith, part of fortune, and his Mars being here. And this had a deep role when it came to his natural talents, values, and resources. So if you're interested in hearing about that, I'm going to go through it in my next letter on Substack. And I will leave a link to my letter in the description box. If you want me to write a book about you based on your birth chart, I will leave a link to that too. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next video. Bye!